Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Daniela. Welcome to the April wrap up. I am going to be talking you through all of the books that I've read in April. I have 8 books that I've read this month. 5 of them are audiobooks and 3 of them are physical books. The first 2 books which I listened to on audiobook were All Systems Red and Artificial Condition, which are the first 2 novellas in the Murderbot series by Martha Wells. I gave them both 3 stars. The first one I wasn't too interested in. Like, it was okay, the plot was okay, it was a little bit like, I don't know, I didn't get into it very much. However, I did enjoy the second one a little bit more. I liked Art, the other robot that they come into contact with. I just thought they were really funny and I liked the back and forth between them. I'd love to see more of Art. I probably will listen to the rest of them at some point, but it's not something I'm desperate to jump into. They're just nice, short, easy reads. Next up, I read The Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons, which I apparently only rated 3 stars. On reflection, maybe it should have been 4. However, I was a bit bored through like the first kind of half of the book. It's a lot to take in. There's a lot of information. It gets confusing because the characters have multiple names, or you'll find out that one character is actually another character. I did have to make notes on my phone for this one. I just made notes of like, as and when I found out who people were and what names applied to the characters, I would make a note of like the original character name and then their other character names, like who else they were. And that was very, very helpful, especially like later on in the book when I needed to just check back and be like, wait, who's that again? Other than that, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it's a lot of information to take in like the first half of the book, so you definitely need to be able to sit down and concentrate and take your time with this one. But the last, I think it's last 100 or so pages were amazing. Shit just hits the fan, basically. And it's really, really good, and I'm carrying on with this. It's on my May TBR. I'll be reading the second book. They're quite chunky books. I think this one was about 600 pages. Yeah, it's like 550, 600 pages. And the second one is just as chunky, if not a little bit more chunky. But seriously, I really enjoyed the characters, and it literally says on the front, what if you weren't the hero? It doesn't read like a villain story yet. I kept forgetting that the main character isn't meant to be a hero in this book. I like them very much. I'm interested to see where the story goes. The ending of this book was insane. I'm happy about some of the things that happened, and not so happy about other things. So yeah, really looking forward to this. Highly recommend it if you can sit down and focus, and if you can really concentrate. Do make notes. Don't be scared to make notes. It's very helpful to make notes of the characters. I also made a note of what happens at the end, like how things are left and where people are at, for when I dive into the next book, because I was like, I need to remember how this ended when I go into book 2, and I am reading other stuff in between. So yeah, got my notes and I'm prepared and ready for book number 2. If you haven't heard of this, this is a fantasy series. It is high fantasy. It's set in a world where we have magic, we have gods, we have demons. We're following 2 timelines in this book, told from the perspective of 2 different characters. We also have a 3rd character who is relaying this information to someone else, and therefore is commenting on the information at the bottom of the pages. Very important that you read the footnotes. The footnotes are important. He's giving you tidbits that you will need to know for later on, so do read them. Next up, I read Gallant by V.E. Schwab. This was a new release. I gave it 4 stars. In this book we follow our main character, Olivia. She's about 15 or 16 and she is in a kind of like an orphanage, I suppose. And one day the orphanage receives a letter from her uncle and she gets invited to come and stay with them at their house, which is called Gallant. There's a wall at the bottom of the garden and a gate, and she's told to like not go past the wall because it's kind of broken on one side and you can walk around it. And of course she does go around the wall, and it's a little bit magical, a little bit spooky. This was going to be a 3 star up until like very near the end of the book, and it just got me at the end. Like, it got some tears, so I give it 4 stars. I did really enjoy the ending. It just had that little bit of an underlying message, which I did enjoy. Next up, I read The Assassin's Blade. I was going to start with Throne of Glass, but I changed my mind at the last minute and decided to start with Assassin's Blade, which is the set of 5 novellas. It is the prequel to Throne of Glass, and I am so glad I started with this book. If you are going to read the Throne of Glass series and you haven't touched it yet, definitely read this book first. I know some people say to read this after like the 3rd or 4th book. No. read it first. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this book that is referenced in Throne of Glass and even in Crown of Midnight. I love this book. My favourite character in this book is Sam. He's on the front of this cover, which makes me so happy. I really enjoyed this. So it's 5 novellas, but they kind of follow on from one another, so it's kind of just like reading one big book because they all follow on and they all go together very well. I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It made me want to carry on. I've read Throne of Glass, which I'll talk about that in my next wrap up, and I'll just say I'm really enjoying the series. In this book, we follow Selena. She is an assassin. They're in a world where magic exists, however, on their continent, there is no magic. There is no magic anymore on their continent, and nobody really knows why. Not sure how relevant that piece of information is to this particular book, but this particular book, it's kind of Selena's history and background and a bit of her origin story and why she is the way she is in Throne of Glass and how she ends up in the situation she's in at the beginning of Throne of Glass. So you should definitely read this if you plan on reading Throne of Glass, because it gives you all the information you need before you start Throne of Glass, and it also gives you a good connection to Selena. I feel like if I had read Throne of Glass having not read this, I wouldn't have liked her, but you need to understand her experience, her past experience, and Sam is just the most beautiful person in the world, and yes, read this book. I've given mine the royal treatment with the Nerdy Ink dust jackets. I got them in the sale and I am super happy. And the front of the book. I'm so happy with the front of the book. I think when I got the dust jackets, I hadn't started reading it, so I didn't know who the characters were. Now that I know who's on the front of this book, I'm very happy, very happy. The last 3 books that I read were the Serpent and Dove trilogy. However, I did DNF book 3. So if I need to carry on with that, make your case in the comments below. But yeah, I read Serpent and Dove, which was book 1. I really enjoyed it. I liked the banter between Lou and Reed, who are the main characters. This is in a world where magic exists. Lou is a witch and Reed is in this group of witch hunters. So Lou is trying to hide the fact that she's a witch and she's kind of like hiding out, but she ends up in an entanglement with this guard. They end up in a situation whereby there were witnesses to a scuffle between them. The person in charge of him basically says, to make the situation look better, they wanted the onlookers to know that they were in a relationship and that he was just trying to get his wife under control kind of thing. Don't know why that makes it better, but you know. And so they basically are forced into marriage. So it's kind of like a fake dating trope. And so that's the very beginning of the book, by the way. I'm not spoiling anything here. So I like the banter between them because obviously they don't like each other. So you got a bit of that enemies to lovers in there. There is then a long-running underlying plot throughout the books. I enjoyed the pacing of the first book. I enjoyed the plot of the first book. I liked where it was going. I was excited to carry on and go to book 2. I rated the first book 4 stars. I then went into book 2 and I gave this one 3 stars. I didn't enjoy it as much. The characters started to get on my nerves. They started to annoy me. I don't know if it's because of the audiobook. Reed just sounded really annoying and whiny, and I don't know if that was because of the narrator. I don't know. He just really started to grate on me, and they were arguing a lot, and it was just really annoying me. And then towards the end of the second book, something happened, which I really wasn't happy about. I really didn't like how the second book ended, and so I started the third book, bearing in mind they had already been annoying me in the second book. The third book, I got a bit confused. I was like, what's going on? I wasn't really following and understanding what was happening. I just gave up on it, basically. I did have a look at reviews, and it appears it was originally meant to be a duology, and so the second book is very much a filler book, which probably explained why not much happened until like near the end, and I was a little bit bored with it. I wasn't enjoying myself, so I was like, no, I'm just gonna read something else. Maybe I'll return to it at some point. Maybe it will come up on my TBR game, who knows. So that was it, guys. That's everything I read in the month of April. Let me know what you've been reading in April. What are you going to be reading in May? Do you have any recommendations for me? Let me know in the comments. We'll have a little chat. And if you like the video, as always, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you next time.